Hey friends, and welcome to Mortisect. Today's episode, we're talking about exorcisms. Not necessarily real exorcisms, but exorcism films. Now, when I think of exorcism films, I always think of the first movie, The Exorcist, in 1973, with Linda Blair, Ellen Burstyn, Max von Sydow. It is a classic, but I would say after that film, there were a string of films capitalizing off of that fame. So we had a lot of exploitation in the 70s, some in the 80s. I remember there was an exorcism film that was a ninja film, and The Exorcism. Like, I think it was Ninja 3. So that could be...
I didn't see that. I got to watch that.
Ninja 3 in the 80s. A woman's like a workout type person or like aerobics instructor.
1, 2, 3.
And she gets... not exercise. Well, that's funny. Exorcism, exercise, but she gets...
Actually, I like that.
This movie is operating very smart, operating on several levels.
Now, we're just going to talk about that film. Forget about...
Is she
Anneliese.
possessed by a ninja?
Yeah, the ninja is this ancient ninja spirit, and you see him in the beginning, and then she gets taken over by this ancient ninja, and some crazy stuff happens.
Who are you?
But it is like a mashup of the best kind. So maybe I might edit this part out. But anyway, so the reason that we picked the film that we're going to talk about, and I'm going to let, I almost said Allison. I feel like I'm losing. Something's going on here. Tatiana picked this great film from The Asylum. Also, if you haven't checked out the interview from The Asylum, check it out. It's on our site. But I was like, this would be a good film to focus on. It's an asylum film. We already had David on, and let's talk about. So I'm going to give the mic over to you. I talked way too much, and let's go for it.
So I always love a good Exorcist movie. I mean, there's The Exorcist. There's The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which I remember seeing when it came out in theaters. That was really cool. So I was looking up asylum films, and I found this one, Anneliese, The Exorcist Tapes, and I was like, this seems interesting. And then I read that it was found footage, and we had that whole found footage episode, so I was extra excited. And yeah, it pretty much fulfilled all of my dreams of Exorcist movies. I loved it. I had a lot of fun. Supposedly, it was real footage so basically, there's a famous exorcism or series of exorcisms that took place in the 70s with a young woman named Anneliese Michel. She was German, and she had a very Catholic background. I read all about her after the movie because I was so curious. And actually, The Exorcism of Emily Rose is also based on her. And Asylum says that the footage is, so we have to actually find out if this is true because I'm not sure, but some of the footage is really taken from her exorcisms, like the voiceover and stuff.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if the recordings
Yeah,
were. I know they're
recordings.
available online, and I listened to a few. I couldn't tell if they were the same or not.
I wasn't sure. But it was very creepy, very convincing. I think if it wasn't real, the actress did a great job. We were looking her up, Nikki Muller. I really liked her playing Anneliese.
It's ironic because, I think the footage probably wasn't real because I know they tried to make it look as if it was from the 70s, and that's a yeoman's task because it's extremely difficult to get that feeling of the 70s or 80s in a horror film today. You can try, you have tricks, you can make footage look old and make it look vintage, but there was something about that environment, just filming in that time, that's very hard to recreate. I thought the beginning, it looked like overwashed, and I understood they were trying to make it look old, but it looked too washed. But what I liked is when they had black and white, when they had that surveillance camera, that looked like a 16 millimeter. And then they also had one with color occasionally. I thought that was really good. I would have preferred the movie just stay in that.
I was also playing the game of wait, what cameras were available at the time period this was supposed to take place in? So what are they trying to match? Is this what it would have looked like? I don't think this is what it would have looked like. You wouldn't have had this equipment. Yeah.
Because, my dad, we had an 8mm camera, and I remember how it looked and the sound of it. So I understand. That is extremely hard to recreate.
That's a good point. I didn't notice that, so they fooled me.
So I remember 8mm and then getting Kodak film and filming it, and it'd be like a whole production getting the reel to reel and seeing it. So that was a little bit difficult, but I enjoyed the acting. I thought Anneliese, I thought she was really good. No. And then I thought the priest, Father Rentz, like when he goes, "Oh, pastor," and he corrected him, that would be correct, because especially during that time, if you're a Catholic priest, it's mostly Lutherans and Protestants that are in Bavaria and Germany. So for him to say that, I thought those little things really make the performance better.
Her medication didn't help her then, and it's not helping now.
We can take her into town at the hospital there.
She's not going to leave this house.
He was using holy water. Now, I'm not an expert on exorcisms and possessions, but I've watched enough where... and even some interviews by people. I know there's been a couple online, and they always say that using holy water, obviously the cross, but I would have loved it if somebody pulled out rosaries, because there was a gentleman who was a priest, an exorcist, who said if you use rosaries, that's like a really strong weapon, and also playing the Gregorian chant. So, you start looking at that. But again, this film is not necessarily meant to be a perfect representation, but I felt like they did a really good job in it. There were times there, to be honest, there were times where it was a little bit boring, but if it was real footage, it would have been exactly like that.
I was thinking about, I think the film that I brought to talk about during the found footage segment, Ghost Watch, where part of what makes it believable is how boring some of the segments are, because this is how it would play out, right? Yeah, it lulls you into that sense of, this is how things would sort of play.
But I actually got really into Ghost Watch. Like, I found it really engaging for some reason. Even though there were slow moments, there was something about the, 90s home setup that was, I got really into it. I was enjoying it.
No, yeah, same. I watch it once a year, and I'm always surprised that despite sort of how slowly that movie moves, I'm always interested in rewatching it. It's never gotten boring for me. And I thought there was something interesting about this film that I thought, from a dramatic perspective, I was considering, you have this, to watch a group of individuals, the priest and the scientist and the parents, who all have a singular goal in saving a young girl's life. They're all there for the same reason. They're all beholden to the same set of stakes, which are a very serious set of stakes. And you have the young girl in the next room over. But rather than succeed together, they're all going to independently self-destruct rather than find common ground amongst all of their differing ideologies.
And have you been able to help her?
While this girl is dying in the next room was a really interesting dramatic nugget, I think, in the middle of this film that, sometimes feels a little bit silly. And I think I was thinking about other exorcism movies, and I guess they all get at that a little bit, but also they're about other things. This sort of felt sometimes like it was very specifically about the conflict between these people in this room next door who just can't bring themselves to figure out a way through this thing because they all disagree, which I just thought was really compelling.
That's a great point. So you have modernity, you have the modern world, and then you have the old world, the traditional world. And they're both trying to do good, but in very different ways. Obviously, because she's possessed, they're going more towards the traditional science can only, help the body and mind. But if there's something taking that over that's interdimensional or something that's demonic, then you're going to need you're going to need sheer faith. And that's that struggle, living in that tension. I think it is compelling.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just surprised by how much I was caught up in that. And I was like, I would watch a closed-door play about 4 people who just are trying to perform an exorcism. The most compelling part about this movie to me in certain ways isn't even what's going on in the other room with the young girl. It's about these 4 people trying to work through their differences so that they can help her to survive. And I guess the Exorcism of Emily Rose, is a little bit about that, with the courtroom drama based on the same thing. But the way that that's structured and sort of told through flashbacks, it doesn't have the same immediate set of stakes as literally a girl barking for help in the side room who's starving herself to death or being starved to death while these people just simply can't get over their own, again, ideologies and sense of self-importance, which I just thought was surprisingly compelling for a film that otherwise, may seem like a throwaway feature.
And that is what really happened, because I got really interested in reading about the case, and her cause of death was listed as dehydration.
That's really
sad. And supposedly she was down to 66 pounds when she did pass. And they made her genuflect so many times from doing constant exorcisms that she had like broken knees. I think
Oh
I
my
read
God.
that. But she requested to have her, supposedly, I don't know, but her parents said she requested to have the priests take over, and she didn't want any more doctors as part of her treatment. So in the end, they didn't have doctors taking part in her treatment. So that's why they went to court over it.
Yeah.
They were saying it could have been avoided.
Wow.
But something else I was thinking about, because she's supposedly, they thought maybe she had epilepsy. And there's so much we don't actually know about the brain that even in real life, when people have epilepsy, sometimes they can't always, it's not a perfect science to treat it. And the medications, we don't even know how some of them work on the brain.
Right.
So it is really interesting to think about science and trying to use science, but we don't actually really know that much about the brain. And then it's the 70s, so we know even less with medicine.
Absolutely.
And then they're just like, oh, well, you know, she probably, the devil took over, and she's having these reactions where she thinks she is seeing things and she has unreal strength, they're saying, and who knows how much of it was really happening. I don't know. It was just really interesting to read about it online.
Can I ask you a question? Because you read about the real case, and I honestly, I didn't think it was real. I just thought, you know, it's asylum, they're making a film, entertaining, and it's made up. I didn't realize, and I'm glad that you looked it up, looking at, I mean, obviously in the film, there's scenes where, like, the spider's coming out of her mouth, and certain things that you're like, all right, this is beyond science. But based on what you read, do you think it actually could have been a real exorcism, or are you erring more towards the side of, all right, this would have been maybe somewhat explainable today, whereas in the 70s, there's no chance of explaining it?
I don't know. I think it depends how you think, even today, because there's so many people that have different schools of thought, and there's people that don't trust medicine, or they only trust certain things about medicine, and then there's things that doctors are trying to treat, but they don't even totally know themselves. We still have so much to learn, that I think that people could be convinced today that somebody is, you know, their body's taken over by the devil. I'm sure it happens still, that people think that's happening. And I read that her mom said that, like in real life, that her mom was saying that her eyes turned black one day when she was looking at something religious. I think that's what I read. And then that she had this unreal strength, just like they show her. And she was so strong that she, like, threw her sister up like she was a rag doll. And she was, I think, 20 when she died. Like, it started when she was 16, and she was pretty young when she died. So there were just these very weird occurrences that they couldn't explain.
So they couldn't, I'm sorry, Adam. Yeah, you go.
I was going to so I actually worked in a behavioral health clinic for a while between undergrad and grad school, and saw things that, if they were framed in a different culture, in a different context, or outside of science, or even outside of that institution, I wouldn't know what I was looking at. You know, there was definitely a gentleman, it's very sad, who basically took 4 of us to hold him down to secure him because he was committing self-harm. And he was maybe 90 pounds. But when he was in a particular state, like, he just had this strength that made absolutely no sense. It was wild. I mean, I saw a young girl come in speaking in what would be tongues. I mean, it was just gibberish, and claiming that she was trying to pull all of the snakes out of her stomach. And she, unfortunately, was having a psychotic break, and, you know, with medicine, calmed down and went home. But, like, I can't even imagine what that would have looked like, again, just outside of that institution, in the street, even now, let alone 50, 100, 200 years ago, when we knew less than we knew now.
Yeah,
you know?
and I think that a practitioner told me once that it took her, it would typically take 10 years to diagnose somebody appropriately, unless they had a past family history they could go off of. And when I read about this girl, she had been taking different medications for 5 years that hadn't been working, and then they just stopped everything. So if you think about it, maybe they just didn't find the right treatment, or it wasn't available at the time.
And can you imagine even, like, taking psychotropic medicines and then just going off of them hard, like cold turkey, what that must do to your brain chemistry? That's got to be crazy.
Yeah, you can't do that. I know with anything, like, if, you know, somebody's on lithium and then you just say, all right, we're not going to give it anymore.
Yeah.
I've known of some people that have had an experience where they would start just being erratic, or even speaking gibberish. And certainly, I mean, when you get used to any medication, I imagine that, you know, it does change maybe neural pathways, and especially psychotropic drugs. And again, I'm not an expert, I'm not a clinician, but, you know, I think you don't need to be one to observe that when somebody stops medicine or does anything that's affecting their body cold turkey, that there's going to be some sort of reaction. Now, with her, like, I know you said that she passed at 20. Is it, was there any time that she ever felt that the demons left her, or because usually with exorcisms, you always hear if something is an exorcism or an actual authentic one, that eventually the demon or the spirit that's possessing the person will leave.
That's a good question. I didn't get there in my research. I think so. She wanted the priest to exorcise her, but that's what I read that was claimed. She said. So I guess we don't really know. And like, I don't know, I'd have to double check my sources. Like, okay. I'm just going off of research on like YouTube and Wikipedia and stuff. So I don't want to give false information.
Sure.
No, we are experts in this case.
Yes.
We have seen the
I'm
asylum
also not
film
somebody who
and
like
dabbled in
diagnoses
Wikipedia.
people, so
We have all the answers.
I'm also not a doctor,
That's
so
right.
I'm putting that out there too, as far as like the medications and stuff.
That's right.
I do
barely
have my
achieved the
exorcism
bachelor's.
tools,
That's right. Yeah.
But yeah, it's just I think I could see how even now, if you have a religious background, and then I was reading that she was having reactions to like crucifixes and religious paraphernalia, and she claims that like she felt her feet were on fire when she like walked by something religious. Right. So I could see how if you're already a religious person and then like this is happening to somebody close to you, you might start to think, and like maybe she thought that too, that's what's happening.
Especially we know what we do when we feel helpless, right? And if you're not getting medical help and we pray. We feel like we have no other options. I mean, there's no atheist in a foxhole, right? I mean, when you feel helpless and like you have no hope, you turn to whatever it is that brings you comfort. And if that's what brought them comfort, of course, that's the direction they went in. I can't even imagine what the situation was like. Sorry, I just brought that mood way down. Anyway,
it's like a default function, but let's go to best scenes.
Yeah,
what was
it's hard because it's a real person.
We got into some deep dark waters there, and
it is a very special episode of Mortisect.
This is. We were saying
special episode
when
of
I was
Mortisect.
introducing, maybe I'll include it. I was like messing up, and I said, "Oh, it's a very special episode," and it actually is becoming a very special episode. Now, I think you have to do the dramatic
Today
voice.
on Donahue, we have a young boy who claims he's possessed. Sorry, Donahue, I'm showing my age.
Let's bring him out. Let's bring him out.
So yeah, let's bring the movie into a world of fiction. Even though it's based on real, I want to give respect to the real person.
Of course,
and then
of course.
let's
Of
go
course,
to this like as a movie now. A fun movie.
Absolutely. So favorite scenes. Is there a scene that really sticks out that you said, "Oh wow, this was good," or it could even be hilarious?
I certainly found it's so funny, but like every time it cut to the writing, like you were supposed to like sort of follow along with the plot and the writing. And I was like, I'm not sure anyone can read this. Is this supposed to be
good?
helpful?
Because I was like, am I supposed to be reading this?
It's like, is this bad stock footage that I just can't read? I was
and they
having
keep
trouble.
cutting back to it. Yeah, I was like,
and they kept using a recording of the audio, and if it was real, that makes it even creepier. But they kept playing it so much so that I started putting the movie on mute. Because I'm like, all right, I've heard enough of this, And if this is something, I don't want to get any bad vibes, but it was like, oh my God, they're playing it again. But it certainly added to the mood. But there's only so much mood you can have
100%.
and constantly play it on loop.
absolutely.
I was really disturbed by the scene where she was talking to the woman about her father.
Don't you know that Anneliese doesn't speak English? This is a lot like your father when you were little. But then it all got worse when you got older.
Oh yeah,
That's very memorable to me. That's a very disturbing scene. I think that was the creepiest scene. I'm all about like the psychological things. That's what really gets to me. Like I love seeing the gore and the spiders coming out, but those are the things that I remember because they're actually very disturbing.
unsettling.
Yes.
That one. Yeah, that was one that I was going to say that, and then with the pastor, not the priest, but when she's make-believing as if she's no longer possessed, and then she's grabbing at him and trying to entice him as I imagine a demon would.
Anneliese, was machst du da, Anneliese?
Bist du Anneliese Pickens? Bist du Bögen? Ja.
I thought that was powerful. I thought her performance was really good,
great, yeah.
especially not to pick on characters that I could have done without. You might be thinking the same thing. It was the
100%.
Bavarian scientist.
That guy
was like
came out of a cuckoo clock. I'm sorry. I was like,
Bring us there. Bring us there. Tell us a little bit about the Bavarian psychiatrist or the scientist.
I appreciate everyone was doing their best, but I think it did feel like there was a particular grounding element to the pastor and to the scientist that sort of felt, I was like, oh, I wonder how much they're ad-libbing. You know, they're just allowed to sort of speak freely because some of this does feel very natural, and then that just felt like it was a bit from a different movie.
We had a written contract?
Well, why? If you have a written contract, that
exactly.
It's like a Spirit Halloween costume.
Yes.
And he reminded me of like the Dean from Real Genius. If you've ever seen Real Genius with Val Kilmer, rest in peace, with a great actor. And there was a scene with the Dean, and this guy's been in other films like was it Saturday the 14th, the one with Richard Benjamin and Paula Prentice, and he played, and that was his character, the glasses, the beard.
If someone should open that book, his soul would be doomed to eternal hellfire and damnation.
But this guy almost felt like a spoof of it. And again, I'm not downplaying. I mean, I think for probably how they described it and the thing, he did an admirable job as an actor.
Absolutely.
But that character, like, you know, we talk about like writing, and sometimes, like the last episode, I know Allison mentioned that about the writing, and sometimes you do the best that you can with the writing that you're given. It looked like the only person who was dressed for the 70s, because it is a 70s piece, was the guy behind the camera that we barely saw.
Yep.
So that's the irony in it. But
For sure. Yeah.
What did you think of Anneliese's outfit?
I thought it was fine. I mean, I would imagine in a Bavarian village that, you know, disco style is not really hitting in that type of area, you know, like you're not going to see somebody dressed up like ABBA there.
Yeah, where was her disco ball? Come on.
Some platform shoes. That would have made some of the other stuff even more interesting, you know, like disco Exorcist type of film.
By ninjas.
You know,
possessed by
actually-
like Freddie Mercury or like,
Yeah, like start
Like, give
belting
me
out
something.
some songs.
That's
I
right.
mean, that and then, you know, spewing pea soup and stuff. That would have been pretty cool.
Yeah,
But
give me Betty Davis. Come on. The fun possessions. Yeah. Do you want it out of you? No. It's amazing. Yeah, I can dance and sing. This is great. Yeah.
I can go on Star Search with this.
Exactly.
This special power.
That's right.
Any other scenes? Anything else about this film?
I would live in a room with these people arguing over what the best option is. Like, I think there is a really interesting drama to find just in this closed room with these, you know, individuals who all feel very differently while this frightening thing is taking place sort of in the bedroom. And
I've studied science and medicine my whole life. I thought I could explain everything.